Stuart,
Yes.
how's your eye?
Yeah, just fine. They do this kind of treatment. And anyway, I don't want to get into it. It's actually much better than before they did the treatment, much stronger. And so it's good. It's okay. The only problem, I might have to do this treatment for the next 2 months for, I don't know, for a long time. But, I'm not going blind. Okay. I'm okay. Couldn't do this if I was going blind. Just have a little problem in the retina. But it's okay. Does anyone else have a question you would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. You were talking about newness and taking advantage of the new year and not falling into old habits. Can you give some examples from your experience when you were a couple years in and what that was like for you? Examples of like stepping out of old patterns.
Uh, yeah, I mean, look, it's hard, look, I've been doing this a very, very long time. And most of you, if you've known me when I was 25 years old, you wouldn't want to get within 10 feet of me. I was a very different person. And the changes took place gradually over time, learning, developing a system inside that allowed myself to change. And ultimately, it went from a really neurotic, self-involved, very intense young man who, angry, upset, and gradual changes over a long time enabled me to begin to see the world differently. I mean, even today, going through the new year, I get up in the morning, I see a different world. I really do. I'm not going to get into what's happened and why, but the whole world is different now than the way I was living just before the new year. And it's part of this change. It's part, it's part of, it's part of that lotus flower growing out of muddy water. 2021 was really muddy water. But what nurtured that lotus flower was a continuous repetition of these classes over an entire year, doing 7 of these classes a week for a year. I mean, that, it nurtured my inner life, it strengthened my inner life, and it allowed that lotus flower to blossom. It's, I mean, how do you give specific examples? I mean, I don't really want to do that, but I'm just telling you from the way I live today to the way I lived even 10 years ago. It's a very different person, undergoing many cycles of change, but the one thing that made it possible was a continuance of this meditation practice. And to be very honest with you, I do this meditation practice for only one reason, and that's from the day I met Rudy. I mean, it works. It works. It worked then and it works today. And that's the only reason I do it. If it didn't work, I wouldn't be doing this. I would be doing something else. And, my gratitude to Rudy is beyond, it's, it's infinite. It's, beyond any kind of anything, for having taught me this, for having trained me in this, for having the patience with this neurotic young kid who came into his life, and made room for me to be there almost every day and to learn from him and to grow because of what he was teaching me. I mean, oh my God, how do you can't do enough to say thank you to somebody who is willing to do that for you. And he told me many things, like I said to him, the day I met him, I mean, I've told that story 1,000 times. You can read about it in my books. I mean, I said to him, what happened that day? He said, Stuart, I saw my son looking in the window of my shop, lost in the universe, and I just pulled you into the door. I mean, the things that happened, the gratitude, the willingness to sustain this work for so many years is what it makes it possible to truly move out of old cycles into new ones and not repeat, over and over again, those old patterns that kept one, or kept me at least, trapped, living in a prison I created for myself. What the specifics are, I don't really want to get into it because it's almost minutia, but I can only say the continuance of doing this work, 6 years of being with a great master, being close to him, being in his gallery all the time, meditating with him, not only in class, but during the day. I would go in there and he would sit and graciously open and work with me and train me. I mean, it was amazing. But it was that kind of training that made it possible for me to be doing what I did, to get through last year, to teach 7 of these classes a week, plus having in-person classes with people coming here. And, some days I was teaching 4 or 5 classes a day, but, it's a kind of responsibility you don't mind doing because what this work, at least I know what this work is all about. And I never for a moment in my life take it for granted. And I'm always grateful to every single person who shows up in these classes, because every one of you that comes here really demands that I have to go deep inside myself. I have to build a system that doesn't allow me to fall back into old patterns, that really enables me to move forward in my life and enables me to open, and more than anything, to connect with God, to be a servant of higher energy in the universe. There can't be a better place to be on this planet. But it took, training. It took years of work and training, and from one of the greatest masters who lived in the 20th century. And for the help of God, the love of God, I was allowed to be close to this person. And, it's also one of the reasons I want to start this in-person teaching again, because it really enables people to get closer to me. It enables me to do hands-on healing work with them. It enables me to work much deeper with them. And I'm hoping that this virus, this Omicron thing, it just, kind of simmers out by the end of this month so we can resume that kind of inner work. I don't have another answer to this. Can I give examples? Just look at what I do today. That's the best example of how I didn't fall into old patterns and old habits and old, depression and unhappiness and this and that, and allowed myself to truly benefit from the daily grind of doing inner work and growing and becoming, a person who can truly consciously serve higher energy in the universe. Not me. I have no need to be a teacher. I have no need to do any of this personally, I mean, what did I want to do in my life? I wanted to write books, when I was younger, I thought maybe I'll go into the theater, movies, this and that. That's what I thought about. And then I met Rudy and my whole life changed. Really, there's pre-Rudy and there's post-Rudy. I mean, it's like pre-Christ and post-Christ. My entire world changed. And I saw the changes. I was so grateful for them. I said, Stuart, you're not going back to pre-Rudy. You're not going to go back and live in that world ever again.
Thank you so much, Stuart.
You're welcome, Paula. You know, it's a very good question, and it's a question that everyone has to make a commitment to. What are they doing here? Why? Why do they study this? You know, is just an hour a blip in your day where you, or is it, you know, this thing where you got to get training? I got to learn how to stop falling back into old patterns. I've got to learn how to open and become a child of God living on this planet. And we're all born here to learn this, whether it's through Rudy's work or some other kind of meditation or something else. Ultimately, we have to go through something like that. The Buddha went through it, for God's sake. Christ went through it. Ultimately, he was crucified, you know? I mean, every great master in the history of this world, every hagiography talks about what the saint had to go through in order to become what he became in his lifetime. And I don't think I've ever read an easy hagiography of any spiritual being. And, you know, I was born from a lotus flower and I spent my life being an avatar, you know? People had to work on themselves, they had to grow, they had to develop themselves. You know, they had to learn. I mean, Milarepa went to Mapa, spent 13 years building houses for the guy, you know? I mean, who in our contemporary world would even dream of doing anything like that? Oh, I don't like my house there, tear it down, build me another one. And build 13 houses. Became the great poet saint of Tibet. What could have been left of his ego? Nothing, nada. I mean, I remember going with Rudy. The schmuck thinks he's having a spiritual life. One of my books, I said, I finally graduated from the University of Schmuckdom, you know? I mean, it was true. I had to break my ego down. I knew no one on the planet Earth who could do it for me other than Rudy. Break my ego down. Rip that out of me. That's how you change. And then you don't go back to old patterns because you remember what life was like pre, you know, and, you know, I remember what I was like when I was 24 years old. God knows, you know, that in itself, you know, makes me do 7 classes a week here to make sure that never happens again. So it's truly the commitment a person makes and what they're willing to sacrifice in order to do God's work, you know, in the world. Now, not everybody is involved in this for that. People, you know, they want to get a better life, they want to get more money, they want to have a good relationship. Yeah, I understand all those things, but those are just steps on a ladder. And if somebody, you know, like Rudy always said, you know, that you can get out on any floor in the spiritual, you know, department store and shop, you know, or you can stay on the elevator, or you get out, you get back on the elevator and continue right into the cosmos. And it's a blessing, you know, it's absolutely a blessing. And it's a kind of blessing I hope and pray that every one of you can experience in your life, you know, in your own way, not in my way. Nobody's going to do it in my way. But it's the kind of blessing I hope every single human being, not a blessing where you put on some veneer of spirituality, but it comes from a depth inside because of the effort one has made to transform themselves into literally a child of God. You're here serving God. Now, it doesn't mean you have to live in an ashram or a monastery or, you know, I don't live in a monastery. I live in Stamford, Connecticut, for God's sake, in an apartment here, you know? But it's what choices you make in your life and what you truly willing to surrender in order to get your spiritual life. And this is a new year. You know, I mean, really, I can't overemphasize the fact that let's not forget that there's a newness in the atmosphere. There's there's resurrection in the atmosphere. There's a whole kind of energy that's different that, and most people by January 15th, it's completely dead. Let's not let it die. Let it really build into something wonderful. Does anyone else have a question? I'm getting to really love these questions because they bring things out that are so profound and so important that I mean, look, I listen also. I always tell you this, I'm not here to teach, I'm here to learn. And every one of you represents an opportunity for me to learn what I have to learn in order to grow spiritually. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Can you just talk a little bit about crying that comes up for me sometimes during the meditation, like today, it feels so strong, and it's like I just don't expect it sometimes, and it's not like I could just blink back the tears. It's more like really.
Let them go, Wendy. Can I tell you something? I've said this before, I'll say it again. The first 6 months I sat in Rudy's class, I had tears flowing down my face like Niagara Falls. I didn't walk out of one of his classes without my shirt or my t-shirt or whatever, soaking wet. There were tears of joy. There were tears of these areas in myself opening up that were, that I wanted to get to all my life. I didn't know how to do it. That's what's happening. Wendy, you look great. I mean, I don't know if this, COVID you had, it kind of cleaned your system out, you look wonderful. You look better than you did 2 weeks ago.
I did a lot of meditating during the COVID. I really went in deep to work with
it, because you look wonderful, and just keep growing. You're growing absolutely in a great way.
Thank you.
And the tears are just tears of gratitude. They're not tears of unhappiness and sadness. They're tears of gratitude.
Even when the energy feels super uncomfortable.
Well, even when it's uncomfortable or it's too strong, it's okay. You'll get big enough to where it won't be uncomfortable. You'll be able to absorb it.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay. There'll be a meditation tomorrow evening. I'll say it again. I really hope and pray this Omicron thing, this Om virus, comes to an end, or at least simmers down, and we can start the in-person classes again, because I think that's a very, very important step for this new year. So God bless you all, and thank you. And again, in all humility, I come to this meditation, I see the faces of people from all over the world here. And I just am so grateful, because I am learning so much about, my work, my service as a human being. So God bless you all. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody.
Thank you,
Hopefully
Stuart.
tomorrow.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.